lot of different challenges, but I was tested to the max. And if I didn't have the crew and the cause, I don't think I would have made it. It was super challenging, but yeah, worth it knowing that we reached the fundraising goal, and 11 schools in Uganda will have clean water to drink. So that was really the big goal behind the whole journey.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to another episode of RunYogi Diaries. This is your host, Santosh Shiva. Every week, I bring you conversations with people who are on a journey of well-being and fitness through endurance sports. I hope they spark some possibility in you, leave you with some tips, and perhaps inspire you to perspire. This episode is also available on leading podcast platforms if audio is your thing. Also, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing to it. Hit like if you like this video, and remember to leave your comments. Let us know if you took something away. In the house today is Katie Spotz, who was on the podcast episode number 20 last year to share her incredible rowing journey across the Atlantic from Africa to South America. And this was barely when she was in her early 20s. Her mission to bring clean water and increase awareness about this problem through her endurance endeavors continues to get stronger. This year, she ran 11 ultras, that's 50 Ks, every day for 11 consecutive days to raise money to bring clean water for 11 communities in Africa. We sat down with her to hear about this amazing project and where she's headed next. Let's dig in. Hey Katie, welcome back to RunYogi Diaries.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you back. It's been more than a year since the last, not more than a year, but about a year since the last time we had you in the show. And a lot has happened. You've been doing a lot of good work. You also been on Joe Rogan, who's one of my favorite, shows. I was so stoked to see you there. I was like jumping in joy when I saw you there.
Oh, thank you.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
He was a big part of like the last adventure and actually sponsored it. So that was pretty incredible that he didn't even, I didn't even tell him what like the world record was or what I was doing, but he's like, I want to support it. So it was amazing. And we funded more water projects. So it was a really awesome opportunity. And yeah, it was really nice to meet him and be a part of it. So
That's terrific. That's terrific.
yeah.
Very, very happy for you. So, I think we would love to hear about pandemic. Pandemic has been one big, I would say, factor that has been different since the last time we met, right? The world's changed in a bit. So how is it for you personally?
Yeah, so I am working full time for the Coast Guard. And so because we are first responders, my like day to day hasn't changed significantly. In terms of what I do outside of work, which is all the charity work by combining endurance. I was originally planning to do a run across Ohio because that's my home state. And I did have to modify that because of limiting the travel. And so last year, that is why I decided to do a run for water across the state of Maine. So that was 138 miles from Canada to the coast. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's been a challenge for everyone for different reasons. And I think we all are very aware of those challenges. One of the articles I read recently was about like, instead of post-traumatic stress, it was about athletes talking about post-traumatic growth and how, if I could say anything about the positive of COVID while not minimizing the significant, negatives to it, obviously, but I think that it's given us an opportunity to take a step back and do things differently. And I know for myself that sometimes it's periods of downtime that you can have kind of a wave of creativity or energy towards doing something different or new. And I think that because of the extra time that some have had, it has helped, like being able to run and focus more on running in a way where I'm less like distracted or pulled in different directions. And I don't think, I would have been able to do a lot of those different events without having that block of time. And so, um, yeah, I mean, again, it's not, of course, would rather not have this happen for
Yeah.
our world, but I've seen, good that can come from it. And so, just kind of focusing on and reminding myself of those things too.
Yeah, that makes sense. And post traumatic growth is a interesting reframing of something like this, because, and I guess, anytime there is a difficult situation, there's an opportunity for growth, or you could just get overwhelmed by it. And I think that's a nice way to look at things overall,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
it sometimes when things are so bad or traumatic, or it's hard to even
Yeah.
think like that, but there is science behind it, there is research
Hmm.
behind the fact that there can be these situations where you grow in ways that you couldn't have without that kind of
Yeah.
experience. And so, um I hope, no matter what, it's all ammo, it's all energy. And so
Mm.
I hope that no matter what, even those hard things can be channeled and redirected and used productively. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, well said. I think, except for situations where people have lost someone,
absolutely.
which is
Yeah.
very hard to kind of
Or
replicate. But I agree that situations like this allows you to reprogram your brain, your mind, and look at things from a new perspective. But yeah, folks who have lost dear ones, it's this, it's just I'm sure they wouldn't they wouldn't be able to relate to this, right? It's just so
yeah.
traumatic.
I
And
mean,
for yeah.
yeah, so one of the losses personally is my cousin passed away,
Hmm.
and she was a COVID nurse and she was
Hmm.
25. So like I've
Whoa.
never gone to a funeral with someone younger than me, but that was also, and that was also, like, she was very philanthropic. She was always giving back. And so, my aunt was saying that, um I didn't have enough time, but the rest of my life is also not enough time to live out her legacy. So I think everyone there felt, um called to live out her legacy. And so,
Hmm.
um we've all been doing little things and acts of kindness in her memory, just because we know that that's how she would have lived out. So
Hmm.
even in that, I still, I'm like, I don't know, just got to always find that silver lining.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I think that's what COVID can teach us to do, and to
Yeah.
keep striving and searching for what is good, even when those clouds. And that's something, ultras have taught me too, and running has
Hmm.
taught me that you have to fight to find it, and it is always there.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, no, well said. Never a easy black and white
Yeah.
perspective to this, but you got to take what you can from this and move forward. That's the
Yep.
only way.
Yep.
The other alternative is to be stuck and be stuck in your past, which is not very. It's miserable. So there's the best way is to pick up whatever you can, any silver lining you can pick on and move forward. So that talking about silver lining and uh, the way you've been kind of managing your pandemic, the world during the pandemic, is coming up with this project, the 11 by 11,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is
So,
pretty exciting. Yeah.
yeah. So, Run for Water, across Ohio was 11 ultras in 11 days to raise funds for 11 clean water projects in Uganda by running across the state from Cincinnati to Columbus. So this was an idea that I've been kicking around for years, actually. And then COVID set it back a little bit to run across Maine. And this spring, there was kind of a window of time when the stars aligned and my friend could help crew, and this is the first time doing like a film project, so the filmmaker schedule worked out. And I mean, I've been doing endurance challenges for a decade now, and I've always wanted to do one at home, in my own backyard, in my own home state. And I think we can all that that resonates with us all to an extent, that like we could go all anywhere, but that there's home. We all
Yeah.
yearn to be where we feel at home, and maybe it's not physical, but in some sense, like striving and searching for home. And so because I did join the military, I think moving so much made me even more want to have that kind of Dorothy moment of returning home. So yeah, it started um, in the heat, like, of the summer. It definitely was more about scheduling than the weather, because if I would have done it differently, I would have gone in the fall, just because it
Yeah.
would have been cooler, and then you would have had all the leaves would be
Yeah. Yeah.
changing. But um yeah, so the total mileage was 341 miles, doing 31 miles a day. And it was part of like a Guinness World Record attempt for the most consecutive ultra marathons in a row by a female. And so, one other thing that I was really excited to do this is I saw that the previous record holder, she did it on a 400-meter track. And I was just thinking, like, you could see so much over the course of 300 miles. And the Ohio to Erie Trail, it's a nature trail that was exactly pretty much 11 ultra marathons. And so it's like a rails to trails. And so I was barely by the cars or in traffic. And it was me and some cyclists, a few rollerbladers, and, runners and walkers and hikers. So it was a really nice little sanctuary, and like a tunnel of trees
Yeah.
basically all along the state. So
That's
that's what
awesome.
I was up to a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that's awesome. And training up to something like this, right? This is probably your biggest running adventure, correct?
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
so
Yes.
how did you approach training to build an endurance to be doing a 30-mile run every day?
Yeah. So about that, didn't train because because when I
Don't
was
try this at home.
like I was doing some interviews along the way, because there were like charity runs, and I would tell them I didn't, and they didn't believe it. I don't know. They thought it was a joke. Like, no, I didn't, because when I was on Joe Rogan's podcast, we talked about doing the splits, and I said that's something I've always wanted to do, like, mini goals. And he's like, "Oh yeah, you could do that in 30 days." So yeah, I went home and I started trying to do the splits. And my uh, physical trainer, or person, whatever, PT, he said that I took it a little too aggressively. And so I
Hmm.
strained my hamstring. And he said, based on everything, like, I wasn't changing my mileage very much. And so he very much believed it was based on the splits, because I was doing something that was foreign and the running wasn't necessarily foreign. So he didn't think it was a
Hmm.
running injury. So the best thing I could do for training was not run. So I wasn't. And that was probably the hardest part of this, knowing that there's nothing that can replace training.
Hmm.
But the thing that I kept reminding myself of is, like, you've been training your whole life, like, in some ways. Like, I've been doing endurance feats for years now. And of course, 11 ultras is really, I've never even done two ultra marathons in a row, aside from a 140
Yeah.
mile run in one go, but not like waking up and doing it again. So I've never done anything, but I mean, I just figured I've, even if I had to, go slower, hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood. But that was super nerve wracking because
Hmm.
I mean, I was so tempted to even run, like, but I couldn't even do that, and that took a lot of self control to, even when you're anxious about like, oh well, I need to train, but the best thing I could do is rest, and so yeah, I mean, it worked out, but we were all very very nervous. I would say like my crew had more faith than I in me than I did, just because I mean, you never know. I
Hmm.
could have done this last year, the same event, and I would have never known, because every ultra, every race, every
Yep.
adventure, it's a huge unknown. You could do it, but there's no guarantee that, I mean, I have so much respect for the distance and doing
Yep.
Ironmans. I have, and all those endurance feats, to know that there's no guarantees and a lot can happen in 6 hours
Yep.
of running or 10 hours of racing, or um, that are out some oftentimes outside of your control. Like, I got chased by a pit bull and that could have ended it. I lost a lot of toenails, and if I wasn't diligent about like keeping my feet clean, I could have had an infection and that could have been game over. And so
Yeah.
it doesn't take much heat exhaustion. It was 100 degrees a couple of
Oh.
days, and you don't even need to run to get heat exhaustion in that kind
Yeah.
of temperature. So I definitely feel lucky. Um, and yeah, like protected, and that God was watching over this. Otherwise, I that it's just, it doesn't make any sense. And so when things turn out well in a way that doesn't make sense, I just have to thank
Hmm.
God for making it possible. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. But just one question I had is in terms of the your experience of running, right, during this 11 days. Did you have like a set time in mind, like you want to do it in 6 hours or 7 hours? Was
Yeah,
there like something like
pretty
that?
much that.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 or 7 hours. And I had to slow down sometimes because I was wearing a GoPro, because for Guinness,
Mhm.
they need you to film the whole thing. And with the
Okay.
heat and humidity, so sometimes I had to walk for that. And then with Guinness, you're allowed to take a 5 minute break every hour, but
Okay.
I think stopping makes it harder to go,
Yeah.
so I'd rather just keep going. And so my strategy was, at mile 20 and 25, I put my legs up for 5 minutes, just because I have experienced edema. So that helped the swelling come, and yeah, that just helped me reset a little bit. And then sometimes I'd be putting ice everywhere possible to cool down. And then my strategy, generally speaking, is walking on hills, because you're
Mhm.
better off conserving your energy than, one person described it as, like, you have a set of matches, and every time you do something that's maybe explosive or anaerobic, you're basically, and so that's how I look at climbs. But because Ohio
Mhm.
is so flat, I think there were two climbs that I walked on. Otherwise, it was running. So it averaged like 10 to 12, with all the slowing and the stopping for
Mhm.
breaks, which, I mean, I yeah, I had to be careful about that too, because it you can't, like, generally speaking, if you're doing your first marathon, you're not racing it, you're just finishing
Yeah.
it. So I had to
Mhm.
really check myself and say, Katie, this is not a race. Like,
Mhm.
and so that was another thing. I wasn't running with other people, because the few times I did run with other people, I treated it more like a race. And
Mhm.
so I found the best thing for me to do was to do it solo, and really take all that energy to listen to what my body needed. And
Yeah.
listen to like my form and just yeah, I mean, I was just constantly checking into my body to see what it might need. And that's very, I don't know. I find it to be interesting because like I could even look at my hands sometimes and be like, oh, low sodium because of like swelling. And
Hmm.
our bodies are always telling us something. And I think running gives a lot of feedback immediately
Right.
because you're using your body so much.
Yeah.
So
Almost, we use words like mindful running, for example, to
yeah.
describe what you just said, right? Just being aware of it. And I think that probably also explains how you ended up finishing this, without too much of a training behind you, just being self-aware, self-regulating, recalibrating the pace and things like that, making sure you're hydrated. I think that I guess that's what's been a core reason you were able to kind of complete this without too much training behind you, right?
Yeah, so I on day one of the days like sometimes the witnesses were like medical, so like EMS. And so I remember one time it was 100 degrees and so they have their ambulance and they're like ready to take me in and give me fluid and I'm like, "No, no, I'm definitely good." And they couldn't believe it. So I did the thing where if you pinch your skin, you could however fast it snaps back, you could tell. So I
Hmm.
did it and then he did it and his was it went back slower and he was just like waiting for me to finish and it's just wild that I just ran 31 miles and I'm more hydrated in 100 degrees than the person waiting to check on me to see if I'm okay. And I could also tell by my heart rate if my heart rate drops back and goes back to a lower heart rate. So, yeah, I mean, my watch also tells me whether I'm heat acclimatized. So it could tell based on how high my heart rate's spiking. And I think by day 4, I was 100% acclimatized. And so that just meant, yeah, I could run, my heart rate wouldn't spike, but I still couldn't push as hard. And so even the heat could be seen as like to my benefit so that I wasn't pushing too hard. It forced me to slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And I've had a lot of, ultra runners on the podcast who've done some crazy distances, and it's all I've always wondered. And everyone has this question: how do people do these things, right? And I think what you say is, spot on. There's a lot of gold in what you're saying, because ultras are not the same as, regular running you see in Olympics,
No.
and it's
Uh-uh.
not that. It's a lot more. It's a little bit more about self-awareness, calibrating your input, your intake, fluids, and you can go longer if you're smarter about it, right? And that's also kind of reflected on what you're saying here, right?
I mean, my friends are like, you treat your body like it's a machine, like because I like looking at everything. I like figuring like I don't know. To me, it's a puzzle, and you just
Hmm.
I constantly, you know, too much, and there's a lot of common mistakes like too much water and not enough electrolyte, and um,
Hmm.
I'm liquid only, and I think that clears up a whole lot of issues. And I know a lot of ultra runners would be like, I can't believe you'd go 6 hours with just fluid, and yeah, so I do fluid, which like tailwind, which will give me 300 calories an hour. And then I throw in a half a banana and watermelon just so that when I'm done and I'm ready to eat real food, then my stomach, which would have shrunk, doesn't go from tiny, tiny to a regular meal.
Hmm.
So I am giving my stomach a chance to, expand a little bit. But generally, I think if there's nothing in your GI, there's no reason to have GI issues. Like if you don't have to break down anything. So I find the liquid only to solve a lot of issues that for fueling. I mean, you can't go without fuel, and so fueling was definitely something that I would listen to. And um, I mean, there were certain days where I was like, "Oh, can't eat that. Oh, now I want this." Oh, and after the run, but yeah, it's by day 7, I think that's when there I would definitely was questioning, wow, will it only get harder and harder and harder? It will ever get easier? And day 7, maybe even 5 to 7 is when the tide changed and it was kind of felt more joyful. And I remember on day 7, I'd be like, I don't even care what mile I'm at. I don't even care when it ends. I just love running. And that's like, there's some corny quote that like the start of the run is when you don't realize you're running, kind of like when you're so in the
Yeah.
flow where you don't, where the whole world melts away and it's just, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's moments of that. I mean, yeah. And I mean, I went to the pain cave, I had the runner's high. You get it all, but I
Yeah.
think I'm I will sign up for all of it because I don't know. The highs are higher because of those lows, and I like signing up for the whole
Yeah.
high, the whole low,
Well,
the whole
that.
experience, all the above.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's very clear from going by what you've been doing for the last many years. No, no questions that you would sign up again.
Well, that
And
was one of my goals. Like, yeah, I want to fundraise. Yeah, I want to finish, but I really want to like running. And
yeah.
I have rowed and swam, and I'm like, don't want to row or swim anymore. I'm good.
Mm.
So cycling and running are still fair game, but I've reached this point in rowing and swimming where I'm like, don't really
Mm.
want to go more. And so I wanted to make sure I still love running and I'm happy to share. I did not outrun my joy of running. And I mean that
Yeah.
anytime you do something excessively, you run the risk of getting burnt out. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have done that, but not with running and cycling.
Well, that's terrific. We we intend that you continue to grow in this and do more exciting things. And and the beauty of this is that you're kind of uh, coupling this with a larger mission, which is the water mission, which I think also is a huge difference, because this is just not about you. It's not an ego trip, while it does probably give you some ego boost. But the larger game is about bringing awareness about the water problem, water crisis in the world, which is what all your endurance events have been about, which is awesome. So, spending a little time on that, right? So how's that going? How do you think that's been evolving for you,
Yeah.
as you've been doing more
So,
and more of this?
I mean, a lot has changed in the last decade. When I started doing endurance challenges for clean water, the number of people in need was about a billion. And so that number has come down. I mean, obviously it's still a huge issue, but I'm encouraged to know that we are seeing that it is making a difference. And some of the things that weren't as prominent for all the water projects is now that there is more tracking and monitoring, and because technology is always improving, that there's ways to do like a 2-week check mark and a 6-week check mark and impact reports. And so the tracking and monitoring is definitely improving from what it was. And that also helps with like donors to know where their money's going and to visit
Mhm.
some of the projects. And early on, a lot of the focus was on water without addressing sanitation and hygiene education. So there weren't necessarily latrines or hand washing stations. But now, like the charity that I partner with, H2O for Life, they won't do a project unless they see that all of the bases are covered. And yes, maybe for the photos and the videos, water looks cool, not as cool as a toilet, but that's also
Mhm.
equally as important. So um, everything has the latrines, hand washing stations, and hygiene education. So I think charities are in definitely improving on their approach so that it is more holistic. Yeah. And, you know, there are more projects now in the United States. So H2O for Life has started partnering with some nonprofits out west in the Navajo Nation to do. It's primarily like the rainwater tanks, which are cheaper than like anything else. So that's been another change within the last few years. But yeah, the projects that were funded from this row were school based projects. So H2O
Okay.
for Life mainly works with schools in the United States to help schools get access to clean drinking water all throughout Africa, Asia, South and Central America. And so I one of the sponsors of the run is called Sawyer, and they do like water filtration. They do camping, like sunscreens, insect repellents, and then like the camping type of water filters. And so all of the water projects that have been funded actually use their technology, which is something that kind of ties in the various partners and the mission behind it. So yeah, I was just really blown away. It was a pretty aggressive fundraising goal to raise like 34,000 in the 11 days plus or minus the days promoting it before and after. But the fundraising target was reached the night before my last ultra, so it was really like, just the icing on the cake, just to kind of finish and know that that part of the journey was achieved,
Yeah.
with just that one more to go.
That's awesome. Congratulations on that. Now, one of the things that I always, and I guess most people who are listening to this are wondering, is water is a kind of a fundamental, for lack of a better word, a fundamental right for human beings in the planet, right? So it's the governments that need to provide clean drinking water. So how does your work intersect with what a government should do? Like for example, you would have uh, WHO, for example, or United Nations, for example, have are probably also funding some of these bigger initiatives, because this needs to be a sustainable solution, right? So what are you seeing in that space? How are the intersections happening there?
Yeah, so from my understanding, so H2O for Life has maybe 20 different implementing partners that are in the field. And so this particular partnership was with the Ugandan Water Project. And from my understanding, a lot of the projects that are being funded are in places that really wouldn't have support otherwise, kind of like these
Mhm.
neglected areas. And so, although I don't know a whole lot, I know that H2O for Life or Ugandan Water Project would either of them. So H2O for Life is h2oforlifeschools.org and ugandanwaterproject.com. They both have a lot more information about
Hmm.
their process, but yeah, I wish I could say more, but I'm on the front end
Yeah,
just running around.
yeah.
But yeah.
Right. No, completely. I understand. I think this could be a more technical conversation with the folks who are actually, operating that whole, uh, you know,
Yeah, but
project on the
I
back end,
mean,
right?
that's like yeah, I mean, that I'm glad you bring that up just because it the technology is simple,
Hmm.
but there's a lot more layers to it. And whether it's because of the environments are always
Yeah.
changing, and if they're relying on rainy season and it's not rainy that season, then what? Or they have this piece of equipment and it breaks and they brought in the tools or the nuts and bolts and they can't get it, and if it's 200 miles away, and then they have to figure out a way to get there. And oftentimes I've seen a statistic that 50% of water projects fail and don't have some ongoing upkeep. And so there's still a lot to learn and grow in that way. um and yeah, obviously a lot of political things that are
Yeah.
preventing and causing this to be a bigger issue than it needs to be. But yeah,
Yeah.
it there's a lot. I'm glad
Yeah.
I'm
It
glad
is.
I'm on this end and they can figure out. And then there's the engineering, like
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into that too. So I'm glad I'm on this end figuring out just how to raise the money so the smarter people can figure out all the rest.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I've read, I don't know which book or where I've read, but there's been this whole hypothesis around water probably is the resource that could lead to wars in the future, right? Because that's
Yeah.
one is the availability of water. Other is water security, with rivers getting polluted, and the oceans getting polluted. Um, that's a different dimension of water problem that people are looking at as you go to the future, right? And then there's environment, there's global warming, so that you have glaciers melting, and then there's certain countries that are getting submerged. So water is such a very it's a probably a very complex topic by itself, I guess, right? Absolutely. But hey, thanks for what you're doing, in the form that you're doing, using endurance to you know uh, drive awareness. I'm sure people who are watching your work, personally, for me, for sure, I can say, for speak for myself. First time I saw read about your endeavor on rowing across Atlantic, it was the first time I asked myself, hey, yeah, what is the problem? Yeah, so what are the problems there, right? And then you kind of uh, learn more and more as you research more and more. And so that's very commendable what you're doing, just bringing awareness in general, about the water crisis in the world.
Well, I know we can't always agree on everything in our world, but the good news is no one's ever said to me, no, I don't think everyone should have clean water. So it is a
Yeah.
universal. I mean, sometimes they're like, why aren't you helping here? And I'm like, they are helping here. We can help here. Or you get here,
Yeah.
I'll get there. But
Yeah.
generally, I like fighting for things that everyone can agree on. And in a world when
Yeah.
sometimes we don't agree on everything, but water for all,
Yeah. Yeah.
not a bad
That's
idea.
absolutely not. It's a great idea. It's a great idea. Yeah. So, the run itself, right? We digressed a little bit about the water, but the run itself. Um, I know you also mentioned there were some moments, some kind of touchy moments when you had a dog chase you, and
Yeah.
you had certain. So, was there a moment you wanted to just give up and say, hey, you know what, water will get taken care of itself, but I got to take care of myself?
Well, so there's a big difference between suffering that you choose and suffering you don't choose. And like
Hmm.
anytime things got tough, like it's still something to be grateful to. I was grateful even to suffer in a way that most people can't suffer. Like I work full time, so getting 11 days off work is not, even if I'm, really challenged in that, there's still something of a gift of that. And so, I'm not a superhuman, and I can say that, like, I just had a blast, even in the
Yeah.
times when it was hard. And, starting is hard, but stopping is harder. We had a blast, and it was hard to end that journey because um I think one of the things that continues to drive me is curiosity.
Hmm.
What's beyond this road? Who are we going to meet? What are the challenges of today? How is my body going to react? Am I going to bonk? Am I going to have a runner's high? Am I going to get in the zone? What animals we going to see? Like there's just this endless feeling of excitement and curiosity for what the day holds. And usually like days are pretty predictable, but out there on the trail, it just kind of being on eggshells and being in eager anticipation for what the adventure will share. And I just think it's a beautiful space to be in, even if that includes the suffering and the hardship. And um, I wouldn't say that I ever felt like quitting, but one of the days in particular, I was having knee issues, and I've never ever had problems with joints after all the hundreds and thousands of miles I've been running and cycling. And it was the first time, like every step, I felt my knees. And
Uh,
that was like, that was like the thing everyone would be like, but your knees. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. My knees are fine, but I felt
mm,
it. And so it took a lot to get there, right? It took me pounding, and it was a trail, but it was concrete. So it was still a lot of pounding. And
yeah.
so, and I was losing toenails, and toenails that have been lost are one thing. The process of losing it is a lot
Mm,
of pain. So even my
yeah.
run gait might have been compromised a little bit based on me trying to avoid the pain of smashing my little nails.
Yeah.
So I am a minimalist runner, meaning like I don't take caffeine, I don't take pain medicine. I feel like pain is a good thing to listen to, not something to mask. And so, day 5, when I did have the knee issue, that's when, someone, my friend that was helping with crewing, encouraged me to be comfortable taking Tylenol. And it wasn't even like, you know, this heavy duty kind of thing, but that is kind of where the change happened, where it wasn't so much, pain medicine, that I couldn't still feel what was going on. So um I didn't feel like quitting. I was just like, hey, if this felt like this the whole rest of the way, this might not be so fun. And there were times when I was like, is this only going to get harder? Like day 2 and 3, my legs felt like little bricks. And I mean, when I'm super sore, I never go, hey, I'm going to go for a run right now. So I was very nervous
Yeah.
about, I want to honor my body. I don't want to abuse or, abuse my body. And so running while being sore was something that was relatively new for me. Like waking up with sore legs,
Yeah.
waking up with legs that struggle to go up and down the stairs. But once I warmed up, it got better. But yeah, I would say triathlon was great for me because I learned to bike and then run, which is, that's what they call them, bricks, because your legs do
Yeah.
feel like bricks. So triathlon helped me know, what that was like before experiencing it in ultras. And yeah, you can run on sore, tired legs.
Yeah.
Might not be as fast, but you can do it.
Can do it. The body adapts.
Yes.
The body
And then
adapts.
by the
It's
last day, I was like the fastest one. Had a Red Bull, but still the fastest one. So
yeah.
it's incredible that like it got easier. And that's such a cool thing. Like usually it takes like being hit by a car, or like seeing someone see like to get the flight or fight. But I feel like
Yeah.
ultras get you in touch with this like superpower we all have that doesn't get activated unless something really dangerous happens. And so I think Ultra gives me a little glimpse of like what that fight or flight, because I did have so much adrenaline during it that sometimes it was hard to sleep. And even when I was sleeping, I was dreaming of running, and I'd wake up and think I was running. So I had 11 days of a lot of adrenaline and fight or
Mhm.
flight. And um, yeah, I think that fight or flight is, we all can tap into that. And it's cool to think that we have these abilities that can be,
Yeah.
activated.
Absolutely. No, there's a lot of gold in what you said. The only caveat I would, for people who are listening to this, right, is that you have a level of fitness, through your accumulated, you know, training and endurance of different kinds. You may have not trained specifically as much before this event, but you have a general body of endurance built in. And so, it's not like someone can just wake up and do what you did. So that so
Maybe they
whatever
can
you,
though. I don't know.
I don't know whether we want to recommend that though. You gotta have some level of
Someone
fitness of
listening is
some
going to be like,
kind.
no, I'm going to do it. You're wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
Don't
I
try.
agree. It can be very dangerous.
Dangerous. It's dangerous. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's
Yes.
you're speaking to Katie, who's been doing endurance for years and decades, and it's like, if for one event, if you're a little underprepared, you're still using your mind to
Yeah.
pull out some of that built-in endurance. But for the rest of us who want to do it, you got to train for it. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. My
So
training
so
was
what's
day 2 and 3. That was my training.
yeah, yeah, training.
Day
Yeah,
1 was
yeah,
adrenaline. Day 2 and 3 were the training.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
So what's next? What are you thinking about? Any project that you can share today?
Do you have any suggestions?
I always wondered, and I think you probably answered that question, but that was something I always had in mind because you started in water, but you given up on water. So it's like, what's going on here? Can you can you combine running and at least now you have a lot of people doing the what do you call that? Running and swimming together, right? There's
Oh, the
this kind
triathlon?
of
Or
not triathlons. They're not triathlons. They're called
oh,
something else. Um,
I don't know
but
about
it's
this.
basically, yeah, it's like two people. They get tied together, and then they go out and swim and run, and it's in a natural environment. So
Wait,
you swim a lake and then you run, and then yeah, it's pretty popular in Europe. It's also catching up in US now.
that sounds terrible. I'm like tied to someone?
I'll tell you what it is. Let me just pull up what it is.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
the real answer is 200 miles. 200 miles. I would like to do 200 miles. You know, the ultra runs that are 200 miles.
yeah, yeah. You
And
have the
then I
yeah,
would
you
like,
have the Moab 240.
no, okay, so
Uh,
here's the thing. If you do it in the mountains, it's like power hiking. You're not actually running.
hmm,
So I
okay.
don't like all the mountains because it's like, are you really running?
Hmm,
At least for me, I don't know if I'm here training in Maine. I don't know. So there is one across Florida that's 200 miles. I was thinking of doing it this December, but I think it's too much with everything else I have. But my friend and I are planning a rollerblading endurance
yeah,
adventure, rollerblading the Florida Keys, and then next year I will likely be getting all the pieces in play for an around the world journey by basically pretty much bicycle. So I
hmm,
rode across the Atlantic and want to continue by bicycle to South to North America, go across the Bering Sea, Russia, through Asia, Middle East, Europe, back down, Africa, and
yeah.
call it a
Fun.
day.
Yeah, call it a day. That'd be like what? Over how many days do you think that
Probably
you
like
can?
3 years. Talking about
Okay,
3 years.
yeah, that's true endurance. I had a guest on my podcast who's been just doing that all his life, cycling
Oh,
around the world. Yeah, yeah, not fast. He just does it slowly, and but that's what he does. That's his life. He does nothing else but bicycle around the world.
that's wild and cool.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
might
yeah.
see him out there then if he's still going.
He's right now in America somewhere. He came back to the US and he's somewhere in the US.
that's that's rad. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Yeah. The thing that I was talking to you about is swim run. The new phenomena of running and swimming together. That's called swim runs.
Okay, I'll have to check that one out. I don't know about being tied to someone while doing it. It sounds a little
It's a team.
frustrating.
It's a
Like,
it's a team activity.
but
I think if
you're
they're tied to
tied
people.
while you're running too?
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
Well, there is
I've
one run where you run with a donkey for a marathon. out west.
Okay.
That was one I was like, that sounds like an adventure. Maybe that one. Just, seeing,
Yeah.
but that's like, I think it's called Run with the Burros, and it's a race that they do every year, and you just, yeah, you and your donkey.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about running across Africa kind of thing? Have you ever thought of that? Since a lot of your work is,
Um,
helping.
So for the around the world journey, I was thinking of maybe doing one leg of it, a running one.
Okay.
So if I feel, because I love cycling, but I
Hmm.
also like the slower pace of, like, if I was doing a marathon a day
Hmm.
versus, you know, 70 miles on the bike or whatever. So I think maybe for the West Africa part, it might be cool to run the Sahara. And I do know some, like, there's a film about it, but
Yeah.
there's three runners that were like the first to do it. And um so yeah, I think that could be, but that's like so far away and a lot can happen. And so I'm
Yeah.
very much focused on the next leg rather than,
Yep.
but yes, in the
Yep.
back
Yep.
of my head.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, possibilities are endless
Yeah.
if you're willing to put yourself out there, and which is what you do. You're trying to push envelope your envelope all the time. So yeah, we look forward to 200 miler, which is probably the next, right? Look forward to hearing about that. Yeah. So hey, Katie, it was. I think we covered fair amount of ground just in terms of what you've been doing in the pandemic and the new 11 by 11 project, and how you continue to you know uh, educate all of us about the importance of water, drinking water, access to drinking water in the world. So thank you for what you're doing. And we're kind of coming up to a wrap up here. And before I let you go, there's one thing I wanted to do was a fun Q&A round. Um,
Yeah.
so let's do that before we call it a wrap up.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Some fun questions all about you. So I won't put you in trouble for sure. Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Um, you love food. You love to eat, right?
Guilty.
Guilty.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite junk food?
I mean, I'm all about dark chocolate. I love dark chocolate.
But dark chocolate is not junk food.
Okay.
Dark chocolate is good food.
Um a veggie burger and fries. I eat that after my ultras.
Okay. The,
Fries, sweet potato fries.
yeah, maybe that probably qualifies as junk food. So, but look, seems like what you eat is all healthy. Not like a ton of ice creams or something like that.
No.
All right. What's the most difficult part of being you?
I think it's just like having so many ideas and
Hmm.
like never feeling like you could do them all.
Hmm.
Too many
Like
ideas. Not enough
like
time.
like focusing on one of them or which one to pick.
Well, it could be like overwhelming if you have so many ideas
Hmm.
and you want to do them all. Yeah.
So, do you have a process of how you go about determining which one to pick next?
It's usually very clear, but it's just a matter of time. Like, when is the
Hmm.
timing right? Like, it's very clear about when doing an Ironman. I always wanted to do that. It was very
Hmm.
clear, and it's pretty clear to me about 200. Um,
Hmm.
just because I feel like, well, sometimes if I know I'd regret not doing it, that's always like a pretty clear, but also I feel like it wouldn't be justifying the training. Like, the
Hmm.
training warrants that kind of challenge. Like, so I feel like it would be not utilizing the training that's been there, which is ultra after ultra after ultra after ultra. So, um, yeah, it's kind of like, well, of course you would want to strive for that distance if you've already gone that far
Hmm.
already.
Hmm.
So,
It's kind of an
um,
organic. It's kind of
yeah,
organic in that sense, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Got it.
And
Got it.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd want to go any further than 200. So I kind of want to move on to other things, reaching the limit that I felt like, was it. Like that was the
Mhm.
farthest I'd want to go. And I've reached that in cycling. Cycling's 375 miles in one go. That'll do it. And that was like a
Yeah.
24-hour event. And so I would like to reach that and my own personal,
Yeah.
running limit.
Make Makes sense. Something you love to do when you're not, dreaming up these endurance sports
Puzzles.
projects. Puzzles? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So that's your mind training. That's the brain training part of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good package. That's a good package. Train your mind, train your brain. That's a good lifestyle, right? Because
Yeah.
I think one of the things that deteriorates with age is also, brain power, right? As just
Yeah.
like they say about muscle tone, it's also brain power. So that's great. Good, good takeaway. A song that uplifts and inspires you,
Ah, ah, I have no idea what I'm even
or a
listening
book,
to.
or maybe a book,
Oh, a
or
book?
a
Well,
yeah.
I have to say the Bible. I'm Christian. That's,
Okay,
yeah, of course. I
okay,
mean, like that's where I get little nuggets all the time. Like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, I get this now.
Okay, all right, all right. And the last question that I ask, that's one of my favorite questions I ask my guests is, if a movie were made of you, right? What genre would you put it in, and who would you like to play your character?
I mean, okay, it would have to be like action and adventure, but I don't know if I could do this, but so when I rode across the Atlantic, I had a mini Wilson tennis ball,
Hmm.
and which was like Tom Hanks and Castaway. And I just finished this adventure where people were literally running with me like Forrest Gump, which is another Tom Hanks.
Yeah,
So, I mean, that's where I'm gravitating towards, but I'm not a dude. So,
that's fine. That could be a challenge. That could be a challenging role for Tom Hanks to play. He's never done that. I don't think he's done that. He's never played a woman.
but the female version of Tom Hanks,
Who would
please.
that be?
I have no idea.
Hmm.
I don't
Okay.
really watch a whole lot of movies, but
Okay. All right. You did well. You did well, Katie. We learned a few more things about you. And if Tom Hanks was sending a script your way, if you're willing to play a woman, you never know. You can make it happen. You are a great actor, so you never know the art of possible in acting. Katie, thanks a lot. It was a fun conversation. As usual, learned a lot, and we wish you continued inspiration, power to do what you're doing, and hopefully broaden this even further as you keep doing new projects, endurance and water, solving the water crisis or bringing awareness to that. Right? So, thank you
thank
for your
you
time.
so much. All right. Sounds
All
good.
right.
See ya.